Mhm. How was your, in your case, you learn English, you had to go through this process of limiting beliefs, or how was in your case?
I think one of the things that I was always very self-conscious. So I was always very self-conscious. I have anxiety, and other few things that were detrimental for me learning languages. So, for example, I knew when I was 14, I already knew I love languages. I wanted to have any sort of job that would let me use languages. It wouldn't matter what it was. And I was just like, I want to go to England. I want to learn English, which now is very common, but back then it was not that common. There were not like cheap flights. The internet was barely making it. There was no Skype. So things were really different back then. And I remember, I was just a pain for years to my parents. I want to go to England, I want to go to England. And then I went there for the summer. And what happened is, the way we used to learn in Spain, or Europe, basically about languages, was a lot about books, right? And then what happened when I got to England, I couldn't understand a word. It was like the written language and the spoken language was like completely different words for me. I would do my test for them to, you will just do a test. They would put you in whichever level you should be for the summer. And I got on the highest one, but I swear I could not understand a word, and I didn't talk for a week. I did not. Like, the teachers were worried about me because I was just like freaking out, I couldn't understand anything. And then that's when, I think when you are in survival mode, that's when all these fears that we have to deal with them. Like, I couldn't understand anybody. I had to, get over my anxiety, get over my self-esteem issues, get over my perfectionism. So I just had to start talking, and I just had, to go through this process because we need to communicate. So it was a very intense time for me, but that's how, in my case, I developed all those things, and how I realized, well, if I have a positive attitude, people are going to understand me. Maybe not perfectly, but by me just trying to have that try mindset instead of, I don't know how to do this, I don't want to do this, and be very closed down, to have this open of, try new things and get out of my comfort zone. I think it was it was very shocking to me that, changing culture, the language, and also thinking that I knew English and then speaking it a whole other world. So it was a lot of interior journey on, be more confident to have to stand up and say something, or have to try to say something somebody could understand me. So it was a more natural, under pressure kind of process to get to that mindset. But it was more in my years when I started teaching, because I realized I learned several languages. I studied English, Italian, French, Portuguese, Russian, German, Dutch. So it's like, I've been through this process. I don't speak all of them fluently, but I study all of them, and I actually was better in French and Italian than in English, and it just comes and goes, the flow of the languages. But when I started teaching, I was like, okay, I feel that the way I was taught has not worked, because it was a struggle. It's not that I didn't learn, but it was a struggle. How can I make this process better for my students, and how can I make them feel in a safe place, and feel that their self-critique needs to stay out of the room, or their perfectionist needs to stay out of the room. And that's when I started to develop these more mindset techniques with my students, because I saw my struggle. So coming from my struggle, I was like, I don't want my students to go through that. What can I do different to make this a more enjoyable journey? It's not about the destination. It's not about being perfect in Spanish, but it's like, how can I make the journey there more enjoyable? I remember being frustrated, not being able to understand the things because they were not really explained or used. They just drop grammar at you, and that's it. That's how you learn languages. So I started changing the role plays in class. I started, making them feel comfortable. I will be okay making mistakes. I will do mistakes myself, and I will be like, you see, you see my accent. I have an accent, and it's okay. So, just making things more natural in class instead of having these, figure out you're the student, I'm the teacher, I'm perfect, and you are always wrong kind of role. So that's how mindset really started kicking in when I had to apply it to my students.
So you have come through all these difficulties, all these challenges, and you know by experience, well, the mindset that the people have have in order to uh, learn the languages in the most efficient way, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder, can we have a little more detailed introduction to this application, how it exactly works?
Yeah. So what we do is like, okay, we wanted to do something that first of all helps the student. So we have what we call guided meditations. So that is like a collection of meditation that are more for things like that happen on our daily lives in terms of before going to class, before an exam, when I'm feeling anxious because I have a conversation, class or whatever it is. So it's more about facing the fears or facing those negative things that might pop up when we are learning. And then an example is the one I told you before, like the positive affirmation. That's one that we use before you do anything to do with the Spanish. Take those 2 or 3 minutes for you to just put yourself in the right place to be able to be open to learn, or to be open to do an exam, and feel your best before doing anything that might be something that gives you a bit of anxiety, or a bit, just put you in the right mindset there. And then we have what we call curriculum guided meditation. So for example, we have the Spanish curriculum. It's almost the same everywhere because it's always based on Instituto Cervantes curriculum. So the content in different forms, but the content of a beginner's level is the same all around the world. So what we've done is take those contents and then make them again mind active, which means that you can be doing this exercise. It's not something that you have to be laying down, closing your eyes, but it's something that you can do when you go for a walk. Like it's something that actually we've tested that in movement, it works better. So for example, if we are talking about physical description, we ask you to do a visualization. So for example, I can tell you a little bit of that meditation. We will start by visualizing